Anything funny? It's actually quite the opposite, but we're gonna give it a try anyway. Ready to be Lost is the title of this short story. We spent the 30-minute drive home from the train station with the windows down, rattling inside the doors, and the radio so loud the speakers were crackling. Somehow the tape deck still worked, and we belted every word to the Journey cassette that had long been stuck in the player. I didn't ask about the file of papers she dumped in the trash as soon as she got off the train. She didn't say anything about my hair chopped off, barely longer than my ears. "Whose truck is that?" Amaray pulled up next to the house and pointed at the red pickup that was backed into the hayloft. "Calvin's. He and his mom moved to the Watson place back in February." I got out and started unloading her stuff. "He showed up here right after the moving van pulled away, asking Daddy if he needed any help on the farm." "Huh." Amaray looked down into the field as the tractor ambled through the gate. "Daddy!" she screamed and took off for the tractor, her arms waving like she was trying to fly. My daddy jumped down, covered in sweat and dust, and grabbed her like she was something ready to be lost. I saw Calvin climb up from behind the driver's seat and turn the engine off, and Amaray and Daddy suddenly echoed against the metal barn doors. "Calvin," Daddy motioned him down as I walked over. "This is my daughter, Amaray." "Hello, Amaray." He tipped his baseball cap. "Hey, Emmy." He smiled at me and I turned away before he could see me blush. "Emmy was just telling me you finally got some help around here." Amaray nudged Daddy in the arm. Yeah, you're starting to sound like your mama." It happened right then. I saw the way Calvin looked at her, like no matter how long he stared, there was always going to be something worth seeing. "Well, Calvin," Daddy climbed back up on the tractor, "let's call it a night. Before you head home, though, maybe help the girls carry Amaray's stuff inside?" "Yes, sir," Calvin nodded, and then he shuffled off toward the car. Amaray watched him go. "He's kind of quiet," I leaned toward her, "but I'm pretty sure he isn't seeing anybody." "Why, Emmeline Foster," Amaray feigned shock. "I don't even know what you're talking about." She pushed her shoulders back and followed Calvin. "Be careful with some of those boxes now." The next day, Amaray made several trips to the barn with fresh bottles of water, saying she was worried about Daddy getting overheated. She did that every day until Daddy said something about Calvin taking his sweet time getting a drink. When one of the cows tried to stomp her calf, Amaray took her as a bottle baby, making sure that she was out at the barn every morning when Calvin showed up. Calvin started finding every excuse to be on the farm. Long after Daddy had come inside, Calvin would stay out in the barn working on one piece of machinery or another. He was even there the afternoons he didn't have to work. "Son, you're making me look bad," Daddy shouted from the back porch one day after lunch. "Everybody needs a break now and then. Go home." Calvin dropped the hay bale he'd been lifting into the trailer, unsure what to do with himself. That's when Amaray and I came outside, a blanket in her arms and a stack of books and magazines in mine. "We're going to the creek, Daddy," Amaray called as we left. "Calvin, you can come with us if you want." The invitation stood just long enough for Calvin to catch his breath. At the creek, we stretched the blanket out between two trees, catching just enough shade to keep us from burning. I flopped down with an issue of Cosmopolitan and began to read. "I'm going to swim." Amaray slipped off her shoes and t-shirt, her dark purple bikini top tied in a knot behind her neck. Calvin stood next to me for a minute, watching her slip into the water and float downstream on her back. I cleared my throat to get his attention. "What?" He didn't look at me. "It's less creepy if you keep your mouth closed while you're staring." "Shut up, Emmy," he grumbled, trying to take his boots off. He pulled his shirt over his head, and I made a conscious effort not to notice the way his skin stretched over his shoulder blades. "Has she..." He dropped his shirt onto the stack of books I knew Amaray wouldn't be reading. "Has she said anything about me? What kind of sister would I be if I answered that? What kind of friend would you be if you didn't?" "I didn't know we were friends." I looked over the top of my magazine, my right eyebrow raised higher than my left. "Working on your daddy's farm for all those months, helping you get that A in chemistry." Calvin leaned over me. "Stealing vodka from my mom's stash and then driving you to Charlie's. If that doesn't make me your friend, I don't know what does." I glared at him. "I could have told your mom that it wasn't bubblegum that got stuck in your hair, but I didn't." "She likes the way you smile," I gave in. "How the dimple on the left shows up before the dimple on the right." "She noticed that?" His ears turned red. "Apparently." I picked up my magazine and started reading again. Satisfied, Calvin grabbed the rope swing and splashed into the deepest part of the creek. "Emmy," Daddy knocked on my bedroom door. "Where's your sister?" "At the creek." "With Calvin?" I nodded, and he bristled before going back downstairs. An hour later, I heard Calvin's truck go down the driveway and Daddy's voice chase Amaray up the stairs. I like the boy, Amaray. I'm just not sure he's someone you want to get involved with. I am almost 20 years old. Amaray turned outside our door and shouted down at Daddy. I will get involved with whoever I want. She came in and slammed the door. Thanks a lot, Emmy. What was I supposed to say? I threw my pillow across to her bed. That I was by myself? I don't know. She pushed my pillow over her face. He looked so angry when we came back that Calvin didn't even say goodbye. He just got in his truck and left. He'll be back tomorrow. I know he'll be back tomorrow. Don't be so melodramatic. Amaray tossed the pillow back, knocking me in the face. Just keep your mouth shut next time Daddy asks you something. She rolled over, jamming headphones into her ears, and stayed there until dinner. Where have you been? I heard the door open and rolled over to catch Amaray just as she was crawling back under the covers. The sun was threatening to climb over the horizon. Calvin's. She said it like it was as simple as saying she'd just been to the grocery store. Have you lost your mind? You just got in trouble with Daddy today. What if he'd caught you? I sat up, trying to keep my whispering from pushing down the hall. Well, he didn't catch me, Emmy, so calm down and go back to sleep. I lay back down and we stayed there in the dark, quiet enough to hear the sheets rustle when we breathed. I had just decided to close my eyes, convinced there wasn't any more to say when Amaray started talking. He sleeps in cotton pajama pants. Amaray rolled over to face me, looking at me like she couldn't actually see me. In the middle of an Iowa summer. Pants. And they don't have air conditioning. His mom can't afford it. I was sweating just walking across the field in my t-shirt. I got up from my bed and scooted in next to my sister. We hadn't done this since the night Charlie took me to his hayloft, and I had to ask Amaray if it was supposed to hurt like that. I knocked on the window, quietly, just like he told me to. She pulled on the ends of my hair. It's cute, short like this. Thanks. I let her pull sections of it up and into short braids. She sighed. He pushed aside the curtain, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He had told me to come, but he just still seemed so surprised I was there. He just stood there, and I had to ask him to let me in. She laughed. Or should I go back home? I asked him, and it took him a minute, but he said no and helped me through the window. She pushed her fingers through my hair, undoing braids and tangles, and I knew I was free to ask any questions. So what did you do? Not that. The full moon made it so that I could see her blush. No, he's not like the boys I met at school. I just got in bed and he put his arms around me. We could hear his mother snoring from the living room couch, bottles clinking whenever she rolled over. But it was still nice. You didn't talk? Didn't kiss or anything? I thought my sister very brave, risking my father's wrath for some late night cuddling. Some talking, sure. He's a Red Sox fan, but don't tell Daddy. And he and his mom moved from Wyoming when his dad died. Did you know that? I shook my head. He did kiss me when I left. After I'd climbed back out the window, he said my name, and when I turned around, he kissed me. I don't know. She shifted so that she was lying down. That's not what it was about. Then what was it about? I made my way back to my bed. I don't know, Emmy, she yawned, but I think that's okay. The fair started when August did. The fields had faded to caramel too early thanks to increased heat and absent rainfall. Everything outside our window was in various stages of dying. Amaray hadn't been to the creek in weeks, and I missed the yellow and green patchwork that usually spread to the county line. Girls, Mom shouted up the stairs. Charlie just pulled up. Ready? I asked Amaray as I pushed a sneaker into my foot. Yep. She wrinkled her nose at her reflection, knowing there was too much humidity to bother with any makeup, and grabbed her wallet. Okra was the only thing that grew. Charlie's voice was wavering from the kitchen as we came down the stairs. For us, it was tomatoes. Here, my mother was handing him a plastic sack just as we walked in. Take these to your mama. We've got more than we know what to do with. Hey, we're ready, I interrupted Charlie as he was saying thank you. He turned around, his eyes wide. My parents made him nervous ever since he brought me home 2 minutes after curfew and Daddy had met him on the porch carrying a vice clamp. Where's Calvin tonight? My mom asked, blind to everything that had happened outside her kitchen, unaware that her daughter had been spending more nights next door than she had been in her own bed for the past month. He's working at the fair, my sister shrugged. I'm sure we'll see him there. Tell him there will be apple pie tomorrow night, and I expect him to join us. Okay, Mom. Come on, guys. Amaray kissed Mom on the cheek and walked into the living room. Bye, Daddy. Night, Mr. Foster, Charlie stuttered, taking quick steps behind me. Home by midnight, Daddy called. I'll win you a giant stuffed animal. If you want. Charlie blabbed endlessly the whole way into town. Amaray leaned against the window on the passenger side of the truck, playing a bubble shooter game on her phone so she could ignore Charlie's hand almost underneath the hem of my shorts. Andrew said something about a party out at his place later, one last time before Amaray goes back to school. Yeah, Amaray mumbled. Maybe. Charlie pulled under the banner advertising his daddy's pork ribs and swung into a parking spot. Amaray jumped out before the keys were even out of the ignition. We found my sister at the dunk tank half an hour later. She had a cone of cotton candy in one hand and was pulling pieces off with the other. When she smiled at us, her lips and teeth were tinted blue. "Have you just been standing here?" "I keep trying to get her to throw," Jeremy Barton turned around, "but she says she doesn't want to." "I'll even buy," Jeremy pulled a couple of ones and waved them in front of Amaray's face. "I said no, Jeremy." "Suit yourself." He stepped up to the front and took the baseballs he got in exchange for his $1. "You don't want to throw? Maybe when I'm done we can go ride the Ferris wheel. You can see the lights of Des Moines at the top, but no one can see you." Jeremy turned and sneered at my sister. "Hey!" We all looked up at the dunk tank to see Calvin sliding out onto the seat. "This is the line for the dunk tank? The line for being an asshole is over by the bathrooms." "Excuse me." Jeremy held his hands up in mock surrender before winding up to throw. Former pitcher for the high school baseball team, it was easy for Jeremy to hit the target. The seat beneath Calvin collapsed and he fell into the water, splashing the couple making out against the side of the tank, thinking they were well hidden. He popped up and climbed back onto the bench just in time for Jeremy to dunk him again. "Last ball," Jeremy held it out to Amaray. "Take it. Go ahead and try to dunk your boyfriend." He's not my boyfriend," Amaray mumbled, blushing like this was the junior high cafeteria. "Then you won't mind if I sink him just one more time." Just like before, Jeremy wound up, and I knew when he released that the ball was going to hit the center of the target, dead on. The seat collapsed again, sending Calvin into the water. It was one of those moments where there were too many things that needed to go wrong for there to even be anything to worry about. They never even made Calvin sign a waiver. The last time Calvin fell into the dunk tank, it took too long for him to come back up. We heard him splash, but because the tank was a steel water tank and not one with a clear plastic front, we couldn't see that he was splashing because his swim trunks had caught in the seat hinge. "He's been in there a while," I muttered. Then we heard a thud like he had kicked the bottom of the tank. We waited for him to pop up, arms in the air, shaking his hair that had gone all summer without getting cut. "Something's wrong." Amaray started to move for the tank. "Calvin! Calvin!" Charlie ran to the ladder and started climbing, joining Amaray's shouts. "Shit!" Charlie jumped over the edge of the tank, bending into the water. When he stood up, he had his arms under Calvin. "Somebody help!" he screamed. "I don't think he's breathing." People rushed forward to help bring Calvin down while someone ran to get Abigail, one of the town's 2 EMTs, from the shooting booth. "Calvin!" Amaray lunged forward, and I just barely caught her. "Let go of me, Emmy! Let go! Calvin!" Abigail performed mouth-to-mouth as long as she could. The official report stated cause of death as drowning. The medical examiner noted that there was a hole torn in the seat of his trunks from where the waistband had pinched in the hinges. They speculated that when he finally tore himself free, his feet pressed against the back of the tank. He pushed himself across to the other side, and the thud we all heard was his head slamming into the wall. He was already panicked, had already held his breath for so long that once he had been knocked unconscious, his body had no way to stop itself from inhaling water. Amaray slept in my bed with me until she went back to school. She woke up every night screaming. It was worse when she was crying. Every time I had to wake her up and tell her, and she would ask if it was real. I didn't know who was going to hold her when she went back to school. Thank you.